Hi guys, thank you so much for the opportunity to present at this wonderful panel. Hudson Space Systems is building a full stack solution to make manufacturing in microgravity and researching in microgravity simple. Next slide, please. Before I jump into things, I just want to quickly introduce our team. I'm Nathan, I'm our CEO. We're joined in the chat by Dakota, our CFO, and we have three wonderful other co-founders who couldn't be with us today. Cole is employee number one, and we're backed up by a fantastic advisory board with over 50 years of research in space, tech, and legal. Next slide, please. So the microgravity environment has massive potential to catalyze innovation. It can unlock novel mechanisms of research, which can be extrapolated to manufacturing. It can accelerate existing terrestrial research, and it serves as an excellent analog for human spaceflight on a small scale. Next slide, please. So major corporations have seen this value, and they've been researching in the microgravity environment for decades, but in a limited capacity. Next slide, please. So every sector of STEM can stand to benefit from those novel mechanisms that can be discovered, acceleration of their research in the microgravity environment. So there's a huge potential market of people who can benefit from accessing space. Next slide, please. But there's a problem. There are barriers. It's really hard to do research, to manufacture in space. It takes 1.5 years on average to launch a payload. It costs $15,000 per kilogram on average. You have to engage with multiple companies, multiple providers. We've talked to customers who are drowning in paperwork for NASA contracts, and existing resources are over-constrained. They can't support the future of manufacturing. Next slide, please. So our solution is microgravity as a service. We are vertically integrating all of these pain points to make it as easy as booking a flight online for our customers. Low cost, simple, and with the possibility of rapidly iterating, because good science requires iteration. Next slide, please. The space right now is very nascent, and because we're building a vertically integrated solution, each of those stacks in the vertical positions us to compete with a different type of company. We compete with launch services in a little bit. We compete with payload manufacturers. We compete with research and manufacturing companies, but only Hudson Space Systems offers that full end-to-end service. Next slide, please. That end-to-end service is wrapped up in a user experience that allows our customers to access their data, book launches, configure their payloads. We have reusable launch systems that are low cost and allow us to control when we're launching and to keep the costs low. We have better hosted payloads that make it simple for our customers, and custom integration services that make it easy for us to integrate our customers' experiments. Next slide, please. The core of our offering is launch vehicles, even though we're not a launch services provider. We've developed patent pending launch vehicles that are low cost and reusable, allowing us to hit all of the metrics we want and offer the optimal service to our customers. Next slide, please. So we're developing 3 service offerings to grow with the projected market and to grow with our customers, starting with a small launch vehicle that we have prototyped and tested already that offers 3 minutes of research opportunity for our customers. Our 2nd generation vehicle offers 10 minutes of microgravity exposure, and it also serves as the first stage for our ultimate goal, a reusable, recoverable, returnable factory in very low Earth orbit to support the future of our customers' manufacturing in space. Next slide, please. We're planning on ramping up our launch cadence to support the projected market demand, ultimately planning on launching our launch vehicles multiple times a week. Next slide, please. 1.5 years from now, we'll be launching our first Pathfinder missions, and 5 years from now, we'll be starting to launch our orbital factories. Next slide, please. We've booked out our first launch completely, and we're well on the way to booking out our 2nd launch. The letters of support and the letters of intent from customers keep on rolling in. We've been interviewing potential customers for about 2 years now. We have excellent tech validation with our 1st generation prototype complete and being tested. We've had successful engine igniter tests in the works over the summer, and we've been partnering with industry leaders to make this happen. Next slide, please. We just closed a successful fundraise in June, raising a little bit more than $400,000, and we're about to raise our seed round of 3.5 million. Next slide, please. We hope you guys will join us for the future of research and manufacturing in space. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan. Any questions for Nathan? Go for it, James.
All right. Hello, and thank you for the presentation. It's fascinating to see that you're interested in research. We actually are doing research on several flights, including the Inspiration 4 flight and on 3 upcoming flights as well with different carriers. It looks like you're not working with other carriers. It looks like you're building your own vehicle for an automated research opportunity in short duration in flight, right? So this doesn't involve any humans. It doesn't involve docking with the International Space Station or any other aspect except for what would be an automated experiment and then return. Would that be correct?
Yeah, exactly. Our first 2 offerings are suborbital launches for smaller payloads, and our ultimate offering is a orbital flyer that's completely free flying.
Do you have any plans for anything with a longer duration in flight?
So the orbital flyer can stay in orbit for as long as the customer needs. It could stay in orbit for years if need be.
And do you have any plans for lunar activities?
No, not presently. We're focused on accelerating the pace of research and manufacturing in space. So anywhere there's microgravity works for us.
Great.
James, can you just give a quick 20-second introduction to the organization you represent?
Sure. We're called the Translational Research Institute for Space Health, which is, fitting for the discussion. We've funded research on a number of commercial flights, and we source for NASA's deep space exploration. So we provide federal funding and grants for lunar missions, for Mars missions, and then also for commercial activities as well on orbital flights.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Tim and then Alan.
Yeah, just very quickly, 2 questions. First being the market for this. I'm not very familiar with it. I'm sure James knows much more about it, but can you tell me a little bit about what the market actually looks like? And then how much capital are you going to need to run this at scale? I see you're raising 3.5, but what are your future capital plans?
Okay, so the market is actually really fascinating. It exists, but we want to expand it. And it really is anyone doing STEM research. It's small academic researchers at universities, it's giant pharmaceutical corporations, it's material science companies. Anyone who is doing advanced research can benefit from microgravity. So we're talking to biology researchers. We've spoken to people at large companies who wish to remain unnamed, who are industry leaders in pharmaceuticals and household chemicals. It runs the gamut. And yeah, anything space related is capital intensive. Our goal is to augment our external capital needs by making money as soon as possible. So as soon as we start launching vehicles, we'll be generating revenue, and that will supplement the fundraisers that we need to do. We project that about 3 years after we raise the seed round, about 1.5 years after we raise the seed round, we'll need to source a Series A somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million. And then it's wholesomely dependent on our traction, our market traction afterwards. If we're able to hit our deadline and launch our orbital offering, we can start to make money so that ideally we become cash positive. But conversely, there's a real possibility that we'll need to raise a Series B, and that would be in the neighborhood of 50 to 100 million.
Awesome. Alan, you're up. Last question.
Thanks, Nathan, for your presentation. So a quick question is, just want to get your thought on, is there any part of that, including the space return vehicle, are you not trying to build in-house, or you're trying to build everything in-house? Because there's a lot of players here, right? There's launches not even to penetrate, there's already established players. And there's Varda, Inversion, all these are doing space returns. And manufacturing platform, I'm sure there's one too. So all these people, they're kind of, all working specific on that platform. So where do you think your a competitive advantage in the short and medium term is compared to, especially given the timing too, right? Redwire, all these. So how do you think about the competition, and then how do you focus on your strategy?
That's a really excellent question, and it strikes at the core of our business model. Our competitive advantage, in addition to the multiple innovations in the tech itself that we've made along the way, is this full stack approach. there are many companies that are offering launch vehicles, that are offering free flyers, that are doing experimental implementation, but each of those components has cost and has timeline. So by doing it ourselves, it's a little bit more capital intensive. Well, it's more capital intensive upfront, but we have the intellectual resources to do it. And the end result is an unparalleled reduce in cost for customers. It's a simplified experience, which is essential if you want to expand the market as rapidly and as large as we do. And it's a reduction in control of the timeline. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Essentially, no one is offering an end-to-end service. And you could put one together, and people do put an analog together, but it's not ideal.
But I guess just to extend that just a little bit, do you think you can get the timing right in terms of you can go to market with a working product soon enough within like 2 rounds of capital?
Yeah, we can go to market with our first product in a year and a half. Well, our first service in a year and a half, because that is our distinction. We're providing a service, not selling a product. But we developed a prototype a couple of years ago as university students. That's really how our company was kickstarted. So we've been iterating on this first generation launch vehicle. We've been testing our engine. As soon as we have the injection of seed funding that we're raising, we have a very rapid and tangible path to launching. And we've been engaging with customers already to book out those launches.
Thanks, Nathan.